It was July 22nd, 2006. I was working as a manager in high tech. I was doing really well. And I had the day off, and it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I heard the doorbell rang. My dog started barking. I'm from a military family background, so I just put my head forward. We had like a stained glass front door, and through the door I could see stripes on a sleeve. And my son was in Afghanistan, so I knew what that meant. It was the longest walk of my life. And I went to the door, and sure enough, it was the military telling me that my son had died. 1 week before coming home, I heard the news at 2 o'clock. So at 2 o'clock from that day forward, I started to drink. And I would drink until I would black out. Basically, I was just medicating with alcohol, trying to get rid of the pain. 2 years to the day of my son's death, I checked myself into the hospital. I was severely, severely depressed, very depressed. I had been for a long time. They had a peer supporter in the hospital where I was, Tyrone, and he talked to me about an organization where I could go where everybody had lived experience. When I first came here, I started with the drop-in and community transitions. And I learned about the RAP. That's an education in itself, the Wellness Action Recovery Plan. And then pathways. I took the facilitator courses, then I did the peer-to-peer. And that gave me an opportunity to give back. So I volunteered for several months, and I had a peer out of the hospital, and we would just walk, we would talk, we'd go for coffee, and I was able to pass on that hope that to tell the person, say, you would not have recognized me 2 years ago. You would not have recognized me. I was a totally different person. And that inspired hope, and that's the best kind of education you can do, is to just pass that hope on. It's exciting. And now I work here. I never thought I'd be working again, and here I am working for this great organization.
An organization like PSO that's equipped to give us all of the, the ins and outs, and to make us have a complete life, a well-balanced life,
You get that positive attitude, that positive vibe that makes you feel needed, wanted, and appreciated. And, it lifts your morale. And, it makes you feel sensations that you deserve to have.
What we have to remember is everybody has some type of a mental capability, and it's the fact of the matter is getting by that hurdle. And these places here, they most certainly do help you do exactly that.
And it's the only place where people understand mental illness, and if I'm going through a spell with something, people understand. I'll come in here and talk to people, and so it's coming here is the beginning of getting active.
I know many weeks ago when we had our facilitator mentioning he was having a tough day, and he had some tremors, and his legs were very jittery that day, and I was a little surprised because he was still there. He was still trying to help us, and he was helping us, but also mentioning that, although I'm here and I'm trying to facilitate and help the group, I'm also having some struggles. So, just bear in mind that, we all have struggles. And for me, it was a very good moment, because you don't have to be high and strong all the time. you can be a normal person.
Peer support, unless you go through that lived experience, unless you have a mental health or addiction yourself, you've struggled with it, you've been to the hospital in some cases, or you suffered with it, you've found a way through it, and you've really sat with it and sat with that discomfort. And that's what peer support is learning to sit with discomfort and helping someone else sit with discomfort, as painful that is. Because I think too often in society and from mainstream organizations, we want to get to the other side. We're so focused on getting someone better, we don't go through the process of how to actually get there. And we always want to go around or over, but not through. And through is where real healing takes place. If it's just helping that person stay out of the hospital, I don't know if that's, for me, really the biggest thing I want to see out of my mental health services or addiction services. I want to see not just someone who's barely surviving and just they're in the community and they're not in the hospital, but I want to see someone who's taking up their life again and developing a new life and just doing things, being able to change the world around them, engage it, and have such a vibrant energy about them. That, to me, having a recovery that's transformative is what the key to me is. I'm usually going to at least 2 to 3 jobs in a day, if not 4. The hospital I work at is out in the West End. PSO, the Bronson Center, that's downtown. CMHA, where I work, is in Billings Bridge, so it's about a 20-minute drive from PSO. Some people argue if having so many jobs, I don't practice good self-care, but part of my self-care is the jobs. It's very difficult to make a living as a person with lived experience, especially if you want to do mental health work. Not because organizations are necessarily treating me bad, but because peer support isn't given the same funding. I make sometimes about $13, $14 less than my colleagues at the Canadian Mental Health Association. The system doesn't know how to compensate us for our experience and our expertise. I've seen organizations that turn peer support workers into assistants for other workers, where you're called a peer support worker or a peer supporter or many of the other names for peer work. But what you're really doing is basically assisting someone else in doing their work. You're a cheap laborer that's just able to do multiple tasks that the other worker just doesn't want to do or doesn't have time to do. As a peer supporter, I think I need a strong base in a consumer survivor initiative to be able to do my role in other places. With PSO having a voice in the community, I can add my voice to that in my organization. If PSO didn't exist, they can completely change what peer support is, because peer support is open to their interpretation.
Peer support isn't just a model that you can put in a place and it works. Peer support is something that comes out of people's experience, and not just people's experience as an individual who's been in the system. I mean, that is crucial. That is a crucial part of it. But people's experience as part of a community. And I think it's important that we still maintain that voice. And it gets really tricky if you don't have the independence to say things without fearing losing your money, losing your job, losing something, being penalized in some way. I think it's incredibly important that we get to be independent, and that we get to call the system on the things that aren't working for us. We're the first people who know. And ultimately, I mean, when you talk about what it's like to be at the mental health system, it's about not having control over your own fate. And these are some of the few places where we and the people who come here have some control over our fate and control over what we've built and what we own.
We had a 7-year lease in our first location, and it was a commercial storefront property. It was nice, bigger, but it wasn't home. And so I sent a letter at midnight to our board members saying, what if? What if we could purchase a property that belonged to the membership? What if we could sustain that property over the next 30, 40, 50 years and people would have a place to grow and recover that truly belonged to them? And by the next morning, I had a response saying, let's look at it. It was the first thing that we hung when we moved here. Many people said that it was really important for them to see that. It was so different than any other model that they had come to see. We met with the neighbors, the library planner set that up. That was part of our expectation by the municipality. The neighbors came out. Many of them didn't want us. You know, we really had to handle it sensitively and positively. Our mayor was extremely supportive, as he has always been. We all went together to get the key on the first day, and Lenny carried me over the threshold. We have a picture of us on our first day, all opening the door together.
With the Hope House, the Mental Health Network is trying to build a sense of, I guess, appearance in the community and getting rid of the stigma of mental illness.
Your mental illness doesn't define you. You're still a human being. You have all these other aspects to you that make you whole.
I see people taking ownership of their illness, of their lives, again, where sometimes people just weren't able to do that. But not only that, they're picking up skills, they're learning new life things, and then as new members come in, they're passing that on as well. So it's very much a mentorship.
We do outreach at the hospital. I do groups there every Monday, and that's open to all ages, but specifically young people. We try to introduce them to the programs that are available in the community, like our Young Minds program.
When I first came into the Mental Health Network, I always saw myself as a client because that's the way you're treated if you're in the hospital or if you're, and so I met Jenny and she said to me, you're a member. She said, you're no different than me or anyone else here, and that really hit home because over the years that's not, you always felt like you didn't measure up.
I'm petrified in the hospital. When I go in the hospital, I'm down to like mush. This is different because you can be you. I've learned to be me. I used to hide me, but now I'm learning to be who I am, and I'm accepted for who I am here.
We really understand each other very well if something is to go wrong. So we kind of give each other strength and encouragement to carry on.
I've seen a lot of members end up going on the board and stuff, and also see our members making guest appearance to talks at some of the open forums and stuff. So we try to encourage that. We need more funding.
We need more funding.
We do. We don't got enough. We use it to pay off the mortgage for Hope House and keep that sustained. Put some money in reserves. You could draw upon for emergencies or trips. Special programs and stuff.
Hear about the trips.
And
hear about the trips. The model has been for so long telling people what to do. Our model is of empowerment and equality. We offer something different. We are under a paymaster agreement with Canadian Mental Health Association, who oversees Chatham and Sarnia. When we purchased the house, we purchased it, the corporation purchased it. Ultimately, our board of directors and myself were responsible for it. But it was under the understanding that it would be owned by the Mental Health Network. So we've had some correspondence over the past couple of months asking whether or not we owned the property or CMHA owns the property. CMHA adamantly has stated that they do not own the property, do not want to own the property, and want to continue to encourage our autonomy. So we do have upcoming meetings with the LIN. We need to be very certain that they understand that the persons that attend Hope House owns a space. It belongs to the membership. And if we do it well, it will belong to them forever.
I try and practice some hope in my life. There are days when that just feels overwhelming, but for the most part, it's a good feeling. And I know if I'm not up to it, there's Teresa or someone else who's holding it for me. It's allowed me to practice being Dylan. The system I encountered 30 years ago, it's much changed, but much of the grandiose injustices have been refined. They're much more subtle now.
People talk about, it's a better system. I don't go into the hospital. There's community programs. But when people are at their most in need, it's always struck me that when I'm feeling hopeless and powerless, and I'm sharing that deep, dark secret that I'm thinking that life isn't worth living, that your approach to me is that you lock me up and leave me on my own. And we talk very differently now about recovery and believing in people in recovery and supporting people. But in fact, that has not changed over the years.
The system is really about placing me someplace, whether it's in a room that's been locked or a boarding room or any kind of service. It's about placing me and just leaving me there. And it implies that that's where I belong, that's all I can expect. There's no growth. It's just a simple definition. It's the box, and get in the box and stay there. It's a nicer box than it was 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, but it's still a box.
And I think that's where CSIs are out of the box, because all you're asked when you walk into a CSI is your name, and then you decide, right? What you want to do, who you want to meet, what you want to be engaged in. My first CSI, which was the Craftsman Center, was that total acceptance, that welcoming, that I had found some place where I belonged. They created that space for people that gives them and empowers them and allows them to do what they need to do for their own personal growth and wellness. I think that's what peer support does really, really well. It has different conversations with people.
And in that conversation, things like self-empowerment and self-advocacy and building self-esteem on real strengths and real accomplishments and taking on real responsibilities. All these things come out of these kinds of conversations and activities and engagements.
He doesn't often wear one when he came for his interview. Peer support in mental health came about, during the period of the civil rights movement. We came together because people were being treated badly. They were being secluded and restrained. They were being over-medicated. Their rights were being taken away. Their stories were being co-opted. And so we came together to address that and what we could do about it. That's where we developed our principles of autonomy and respect and dignity.
I celebrate the opportunity to be able to hug another human being and tell them that I love them, and they tell me that they love me, and it can be honest and real and okay, And it's not a medical model, and it's not a clinical model, and it's not even always a community model. It just is real.
What the 25th is also about too is celebrating all that and the beauty that these organizations are and the beauty they bring out in each of us.
We've moved from a place where nobody wanted anything to do with us and we were just not getting very far in changing things to a place where everybody wants to steal what we're doing. I mean, you know, yes, it's a challenge. It's also an amazing success.
What I've learned as an activist is you have to celebrate the small successes. And so it will be a moment or many moments of celebration, but also recognition that the work goes on.